First. Hi, everybody. Let's see here. How are we doing today? So we got a few minutes before I'm going to actually start the webinar today. I usually like to talk about deals that I'm working on. I don't know how many people or if anyone out there is in Arizona right now, but Buckeye, Arizona has hit our strong market data and it's hit it hard. So if you're actually in Arizona, Buckeye is a good place for you to look. I was looking at some BOGO deals there today and I was searching through, and I think I found a couple ones. I was looking in the older area of Buckeye. I think it's zoned MR, which they actually don't have anymore. It's MNU. They got rid of the MR zone. But anyway, for those of you there, there is a lot of action, a ton of action. It is growing very quickly, and things are being developed quite quickly. I wanted to share that with you. That is a really good market that has hit our desk, has hit my desk. Now, updates on deals. So let's talk about where we are. So I have the Creekside apartment deal. That is one deal, and part of that property is in a flood zone AE, which is a 100-year floodplain, and it's very minimal. It's this very small amount, and I think it has 3 inches that are in the zone AE. And here's the crazy thing about FEMA: it doesn't matter how much it's in there. You think 3 inches, maybe 100 foot by 20 feet or 200 feet by 20 feet. So it's something like that, but it's only 3 inches. And what I'm talking about is I'm talking about the base zone level. So zone AE, it's like the overflood. When things flood, it's like the extra flooding that the water gets out over on. And we have 3 inches. We have a property it's 20 feet by probably less than 200 feet that has 3 inches on it, and it still has to stay in the zone AE. And so one of the questions might come up, okay, Joe, that's a lot of space. That's a parking space or a couple of parking spaces or a roadway or something. And so in where this jurisdiction is, the way they handle that is the zone AE is that they will allow you to modify that zone AE so we can actually dig out a little more closer to the edge of the property, and then we can get rid of all of that. But what we cannot do is we cannot store less water. We have to store the same amount of water plus a little bit more in order to move that around so it works. That's just a little tip and trick that we use when we're working with properties that are in the FEMA floodplain zone AE. It can be tricky. The hardest thing I think about navigating with FEMA is that they have so many little rules and regulations. So if you don't do it exactly the way you're supposed to do it or input it the way you're supposed to input it, they'll actually kick it out. Definitely read the rules, read the applications when you do that to make sure that you're putting it in the right spot. It's 1:05, so I'm going to go ahead and start today. Today, this is our live workshop. So it's thinking like an investor, and this is how business owners can find structure and profit from big opportunities. In this live workshop, we're going to show you how to create life-changing wealth through stacking. Most people think that real estate developers are rich people who buy land. And I need to tell you that's not the truth. The truth is that developers are just people who know how to spot and create value where it does not exist. So today I'm going to show you how to do the same 5-step process my company currently uses to do millions of dollars per year in developments. And we have a team of 5 people. So we don't have a huge team, but we do millions of dollars. And the fact is that for the biggest deals, we don't even buy the land before we add the value. We just need to make sure we control it before we add the value. And I'm going to show you how that works. So by the end of this, some of you are going to want to partner with us, and some of you are going to want to learn how to do this yourself. And then others are just going to probably walk away seeing a way to take advantage of another opportunity in real estate. And it's just a little bit different. But if you stay to the end, this is what I'm going to give you. We have developed the Real Estate Developer Academy. We put a free course out there. And this will go through all the things that I talk about today. And it will also allow you to use some of the software and some of the tools that we use on a daily basis to do our deals. So most entrepreneurs make good money. I'm going to change that. I'm going to say most entrepreneurs make great money, but they feel stuck on the income treadmill. Why? Because they're trading time for money, and risk is concentrated in one person's head. That's usually the business owner's head. And not knowing how wealthy people actually invest, do deals, do other deals, they're watching people make huge plays and they're feeling left out. And it feels like you don't have the money and no access to the deals. So today, my goal is to help you spot wealth opportunities in real estate. And I want you to do 2 to 3 deals per year instead of chasing hundreds of clients. I don't know how many of you knew this, but I used to own restaurants. And restaurants, we had to literally chase hundreds of clients a day just to break even. And this is a much different game. And maybe you're in a business that's like that. The other thing I'm going to show you how to do is I'm going to show you how to leverage capital with other investors so that you can get better deals, bigger deals, and make more money. You're also going to be able to create systems scalable with wealth. So what does that mean? I'm going to just show you in just a few minutes, and then we're going to stop chasing income and we're going to start creating the generational wealth engine. I have a disclaimer, and that's you're probably not going to make $1 million on your first deal. Not very many people do. But what I can tell you today is that this doesn't work for everyone, and it might not work for you. But you will see and start to think in terms of generational wealth. And if we can just get that far today, that's a huge mind shift because you'll start to see things differently and start to see things, you'll look at things differently. Because using these strategies I'm going to show you today, we've made over $1 million on these following deals. Now, this particular deal, this was a 9-building apartment complex that we converted to condos. Each building's 5 stories, 2 stories underground parking, and 3 stories condo on top. This deal here, this was my first subdivision. I don't know if you can see on there. You can actually see my kids' names on the streets. We named the streets after them. That was pretty awesome. This deal here, this was on the coast, and this was an RV park tiny home deal. And this thing was awesome. That was a really fun deal to do. And then here's some more projects. And why am I showing you all of these projects? Is the reason being is because I want you to know and understand that I do real estate. That's what I do first. I'm a developer first. I'm everything else second. And my team has put together this little PDF where we can send it to you and you could go ahead and verify all the deals I just showed you. And you'll be able to see the closing statements and all of that. We've put it all together and then you just go online and you just track it down. But it's super cool. And I bring this up because I see a lot of people teach things, and especially in real estate. I attend a lot of real estate courses over my career, and I see people teach things that they really have no business teaching, meaning they just haven't done enough deals. If you've done 20, 30, 40 deals, that's not enough deals to be teaching it. And that's why I put this together so that you can see that I have done the deals and I do know what I'm talking about. And I've worked with a ton of people. So here's what I've realized is that most business owners, high W-2 income earners have amazing skills. They just don't see opportunities and think in terms of generational wealth the same way me and my company do today. So if there's one thing you get away from today, I want it to be this, and that's the understanding that wealth, and more specifically generational wealth, comes from controlling value before it exists. Now, when I say generational wealth, some people, I lose them right there. Why? Because they're thinking, oh, this is going to take 10, 20, 30 years to create. No, that's not the case. It actually can help start that cycle in a very short amount of time. And here's why. We don't buy finished assets. We control value creation and then we create the value in the asset. Okay? So that's how you build generational wealth. So here's an easy example. I do this with land. I'm a real estate developer. We do it with land and entitlements. So you can buy a piece of raw land and then you go out and you get the entitlements on this land. That's called the permission to build or the permission to build what you want to do with it. Once you have the entitlements, then you can go ahead and start the horizontal and vertical construction. Okay? Very simple. So here's another way to think about it. Think about it as like a medical student. So you have a medical student, this person's gone to school, they're in medical school, they're going along, and then all of a sudden they sit down, they take the test, they pass the test, and then they become a board certified doctor. So all they're doing is that they had value before, but until they pass that test, the value or the entitlements aren't realized. But the minute they pass that test, then they get their board certified letter that says, hey, you're a doctor now. Then they have their entitlements. They've created the value and now they control the value. Okay? Or you can think about it in terms of Amazon. Say you bought Amazon in 2001 and you knew that it was going to go up and now it's 2026 and you've made a bunch of money. Okay? It's the same thing. You've controlled the process. So the wealth creation is not in owning things. It's in the transformation of things. And it's a lot of people make a mistake. Like lots of times we do not own, my company doesn't own the project, but we control the project, we control the property, and we usually don't own it until we have the entitlements, until we've become the board certified doctor, then we buy. And that's how we minimize risk. So think of it this way. You have your raw land, the permission to build, or you have the medical student, then you have the board certified doctor, or Amazon in 2001 and Amazon in 2026. So what I'm trying to show is that controlling the value creation and then capturing the gain is what we do. And that's what I want you to do because that's how you're going to start that wealth engine. That's how you're going to start generational wealth. And so here's how we do it. We do it with these 5 steps. One is first is we find big opportunities. Now, everyone thinks a big opportunity is something different. So I just want to qualify it here. A big opportunity is where we're able to have the least amount of risk and make the most amount of money. That is a big opportunity. So we're looking for projects or deals where we can very, very little risk, but huge upside. Okay. So that's where when I say most people are thinking too small, we're looking for asymmetric opportunities. You don't need 1,000 clients. You only really need 2 or 3 great deals to get the ball rolling on this. And then number 2 is we de-risk the deal. That's what I was talking about. We want that risk small as we can get it. And that's probability times profitability over timeline. Warren Buffett, the first rule he has is don't lose money. And do you know why he has that rule? So let's say you had $100,000 and let's say you lost $50,000. Now, let's say you had to make that $50,000 back. Okay, you invest $50,000. How long is it going to take you to make that $50,000 that you lost? A long time. It could be a long time. That's why his rule is we just don't lose money. Okay. And I believe the same thing. We do it, we run our stuff the same way. Number 3 is we got to create value because why? Because wealth comes from controlling value before it exists. And the great example about this is the student who wants to be a physician. This student is taking classes to become a physician, and then all of a sudden they take the test, pass the test, and they get their board certification, and now they are the doctor, and they've controlled the value before it existed. Okay, and then the next thing we do, number 4, is we apply leverage. And why do we apply leverage? Leverage gives us the multiple that we need to make lots of money in a short amount of time with very little risk. Okay. And then number 5 is we exit and recycle the capital. What does that mean? Is that we do what we say we're going to do, we execute on the deal, we sell it, then we take the capital that we've made on that and we go and we stick it in the next deal. Okay. That gets the ball rolling. So this is the 5-step wealth curve formula. Find big opportunities, de-risk the deal, create value, apply leverage, exit, and recycle the capital. Now I'm going to start here with find big opportunities. Now remember, I said that means something different to everyone. So a long time ago, I started a restaurant when I was in college, and it sucked. The restaurant was fun. I enjoyed the time. What sucked about it was that I was not a good operator. I wasn't a good business owner. I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never even really worked in a restaurant before I opened one. Big mistake, big red flag there. And here's the thing. I did all of that before I did any development deals, and I was just an operator. And I was a bad one at that. I didn't really understand what I was trying to achieve other than I wanted to make a lot of money. And so I went through a slew of businesses. I owned restaurants. I had a construction company. I've dug holes, poured foundations, built houses from the ground up. And here's what I learned was that I was just working way too hard and the money just wasn't adding up. And when you work too hard and you get paid too little, you start to lose your motivation and you get tired. I tried many different businesses, and the fault I had or the problem I had with it was I was thinking 100 clients times $10,000 is $1 million. It is. But now my thought process started to change and I started to think different on accident. Why? Because I did a deal and I made $1 million. And that deal, I knew what I was doing, but I fell into it backwards. Like one step led to the next step, led to the next step, led to the next step. All of a sudden, I'm building a subdivision. And I didn't really realize it until I was in the middle of it. And then I didn't really realize how much money I was going to make until I sold it. And so that's how it happened for me. And the thing I want to point out is I didn't work a lot harder to get that $1 million. I didn't do anything different. Like I wasn't working Saturdays and Sundays. I wasn't doing those things to make that $1 million. What I didn't change in my work ethic. I still have great work ethic. I love what I do. but I changed the way I thought about what I was doing. So instead of having to chase those 1,000 customers or 300 customers a day to come into my restaurant so I could break even, all I had to do was focus on this one project, which was going to produce 40 customers or 50, however many lots, it was 54 lots, something like that. 54 customers, one customer. I sold all those lots to one customer, but I created 54 things that I made money on to one person. And what does that mean? It means your income is directly determined by the thought process and the vehicle. That's the thesis. The vehicle for us is real estate. Okay. So some vehicles require hundreds of transactions, like a restaurant. That's a vehicle to earn money. Others require only a few, like real estate, like what I'm teaching you now. So here's the thing. A lot of people overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but they really underestimate what they can do in two. And so, therefore, they don't stick it out to the second year. And the second year is when you really start to make money. So, I want you to write down somewhere by the end of year two, how much money do you want? Is that 1 million? Is it 5 million? Is it 10 million? What is that number? Now, don't go crazy and put some high number that you could never ever hit. Put a number that is a stretch. Put a number as if $1 million is a lot of money to you, I want you to put $2 million. All right. If $10 million is a lot of money to you, I do not want you to put $20 million. Okay. I want you to put 1 to 2. If you're making $1 million a year already, you can go ahead and put 4 million. But if you're not, 2 million is like cap. That's where I want you to start. But what I can tell you is that it's very doable with this system. I just went through those very 5 steps. They were very simple, right? It's very simple. Now, the parts in between are hard, and you actually really have to understand what to do there. But from the 1,000 foot level, it's very simple. And I'll tell you the truth. And the truth is that if you do those 5 steps over and over and over again, 6 to 10 times in the next 2 years, 24 months, and you get those deals, if you're doing the steps, you'll get the deals. I promise you that. There's no way you cannot be successful if you're following the steps and doing it every day, doing it religiously. But if you're not, and you will get the deals, that money will come and it will show up faster and easier. You'll look back and you'll be like, wow, I just made this amount of money. And I didn't even realize it when I was in the middle of it that I was doing this. It's happening, it's working for me. Keep that in mind. It's very important. So, where do these opportunities come from? Once I realized that the real estate deals were the vehicle, so real estate is now my vehicle. I got out of restaurants, I got into real estate. The next question became was, what makes a great vehicle and where do I find one? The one I want to use. Here's the thing. We came up with an opportunity filter. And here's how my company and myself look at deals every single day now. Is that one, first thing is that we're looking for wealth curve markets, and that's where we see 5% or more or higher year over year appreciation. Why? Because while we're doing the work, while we're creating the value, we want this to not just go up in value because of the value, but we want it to go up in value also naturally. Why? That's the extra. That's the icing on the cake. We look to double our money in any deal we do, and we don't go longer than 18 months. The deal has to be very special for me to surpass our 18-month timeline. Why? Because we want to buy and sell in the same market. So finding opportunities, this is the first step because a great deal can still fail if it's not structured correctly. And that's where the 5 step process comes in. So here's the 5 step wealth curve formula. So we're going to start with big opportunity. We just went over big opportunities. Now we're going to de-risk the deal. So step 2, de-risking the deal. The biggest myth is that real estate is risky. Remember when I said we want the least amount of risk? This is in anything we do. We want the least amount of risk for the largest outcome. Least amount of risk, largest outcome. I've been a real estate developer for over 25 years, and I'm one of the most risk adverse people. I do not like risk. Every point I see risk somewhere or something, I'm trying to get rid of it before I do something. And it's not just in work. I see it all over the place. I do it all over. But I try to pull risk out. I do not like risk. So real estate is not risky. Alternative investments are risky or are not risky, but people tell you they are. And people seem to think they got this in their mind that if you have to take big risks to make big profits. And I can tell you That's for amateurs. It's so far from the truth. It's not even on the same playing field. The biggest risk, and this is where I see people make so many mistakes, is not understanding the investment and then taking input, meaning advice or asking questions from people, places, or things that are qualified to talk on the subject. I see a lot of people get advice from their neighbor, their father, their uncle, somebody else that they know. Well, has that person ever done what you're trying to do or what you're getting advice on? If they haven't, don't take their advice. They don't know what they're talking about. And if they have, take it with a grain of salt until they've become an expert at it. Because that's why I said if you've done 30 or 40 deals, you shouldn't be teaching. You need to do hundreds of deals to be able to teach because you've seen lots of things and you know how things truly work. You've been through multiple cycles. The deals we do are de-risked and are highly engineered through controlling the opportunity before it exists. This is where I'm talking about how people think that being a real estate developer is risky. It is not risky. Why? Because we de-risk the deals before we do them. This is how I look at it. We don't get paid on the deal. We get paid on risk management. That's why I'm trying to get the biggest outcome for the least amount of risk. Big outcome, little risk. Our job is to make the biggest spread. That's the biggest outcome, the smallest amount of risk within an 18-month timeline. Why? Because we want to buy and sell in the same market. We aren't chasing the deals with the biggest profit. I don't do the deals with the biggest profit, and we aren't interested in ego deals. I don't care if you think I'm cool because I build buildings or because I built subdivision. I really don't do it. Real estate's my vehicle. That's not why I'm in real estate. We're looking for we're looking at deals where we control the outcome before the value is created and we control the game board before we start playing. This is our unfair advantage. Controlling the game board while everyone else is putting their pieces on it and getting ready to play. They don't even really realize it, but they're playing our game. Why? Because we control the game board. So when you start thinking, acting, and planning this way, you're creating generational wealth. And you don't even know it. You may not even know it, but that's really the thought process, and that's really the process and the systems to create generational wealth. Early on, I realized something different. And that is that people, businesses making the most money were not taking the most amount of risk. As a matter of fact, people who were making the most money were taking very little risk, and it was very probable and controlled risk, meaning they had a set of parameters and they knew that risks that they were in were inside these set of parameters. They weren't back out here or way out here. And instead, they were the ones removing risk step by step. And that's what I do. That's what I teach you to do is that we're going to remove risk at every chance we get. We do not like risk, but we like the large outcomes. So every time we remove risk, the deal becomes more valuable. And as developers and investors, we don't build things first. We control the opportunity, and then we create the value, and then we make sure that we do it using very little risk. So as a recap, you need to remove risk, create certainty, and then the value begins to appear. So doesn't it make sense that if risk disappears, then the value of our project increases? Absolutely. That's a no-brainer. The single idea explains most million-dollar transactions. And once we learned how to remove risk, we discovered something even more powerful. And that is that you can create millions in value without building anything. Now, I want you to think back to the doctor, the student who wants to become a doctor, and then the doctor, right? I want you to think about how they create the value, but they're not building anything. They're building their mind, right? They're building the process. They're building it so that they could take that test and they can pass it. And then they've just created millions of dollars in value. All right. So we just talked about de-risking the deal. Now let's talk about create value. Step 3, create value. Most people think wealth comes from buying things, owning things, and holding things. And I'll tell you what, wealth does come from that. It does come from that, but that is the slow boat to wealth. That is the 30 years. That is the Warren Buffett way to build wealth. Obviously, it's worked. He's done great, but it's taken him a lifetime. And I'm not saying it's bad. That's totally fine. But that's not how I really want to do it. I want to build wealth. I also want to enjoy it. I don't want to stay in my vehicle for my entire life. I want to have the choice to quit, to pull over and be like, I'm done. I'm out. I'm good. I got enough. Or to keep going if I want to go. Here's the thing. Wealth is created when value changes, right? not when assets sit still, not when they just appreciate. That's years and years wealth creates. So remember this, wealth comes from controlling value before it exists. So what does that mean? That means we're controlling the opportunity, then we're making the opportunity happen, and then we're extracting the wealth from that opportunity that we've created. So imagine this, someone finishing medical school. Day one, they're a medical student, right? And then somewhere in the near future, they take a test and they become a licensed doctor. What changed? They're still as smart as they were. They still have all the practice and all the stuff they did when they showed up to take the test. The thing that changed is they created the value when they took the test. They created the value when they did the paperwork. Guess what? It's the same thing in real estate development. The majority of the value is created and the majority of the money is created when you go from raw land to entitled land. Okay. And that's in easy terms, we call it permission to build. All right. That's where the largest slice of value is created. That's where the most money is made in real estate. And then once you get your entitlements or your permission to build, then you go ahead and build a home or sell it to a home builder. And they want to buy it from you. Why? Because you've taken out the risk for them. The risk is gone for them. That's why they're paying all that money. So here's how the numbers play out. We call this the money stack. So a piece of land that may or may not be buildable. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go out and we're going to find out if the land is buildable. And we do find out the land is buildable. Great. Then we're going to put it under contract so we control that property. And then we're going to get the entitlements so that we can divide up the land and make multiple amounts of money. We call this the money stack. And so here's what happens. If you look, I want you to pay attention to the lower part of it, the profit on job. So you have the raw land, right? That's great. And now what's happening is that you have the entitlements. This is the biggest part. See how big this is? This is where people make the most money in real estate, the entitlements. And then guess what? The home builder comes in, or the building builder, or the project builder comes in and they build it. And they make a little bit of money too. But most of the money is made in the entitlements. And that's why I'm teaching you, I'm talking about we get the permission to build something. We get the entitlements. And how do we do that? We do that through paperwork and applications. Now, like I said before, I want you to notice where the most amount of money is made. The most amount of money is made in the entitlements. It's not in construction. It's not in the bare land. It's not in the new construction. It's in the entitlements. And it's always been in the entitlements of the land. That has always been where the most amount of money in real estate is made. So this is real estate's version of a stock option. You buy projects only when the deal goes up or only when we create the entitlements. Let me explain this from the beginning so that we got it real clear, because I'm going to explain it a couple times. But one is that we see an opportunity to create some value on some raw land. We see a piece of raw land next to a highway or next to a subdivision or next to something. And we say, hey, you know what? That raw land would be great developed as X apartments, single family subdivision, storage facility, one of those things. And we say that would be, so we go and we talk to the person that owns the land. We say, hey, you know what? I'm going to buy your land. I'll buy your land for X, but I need some time to do some due diligence and get some things done on the property. So I'm going to put X in escrow. And if those things turn out the way I want them to, I'm going to go ahead and buy your land for X plus Y. So you're going to make good money. They say, okay, that's great. That's what we call putting it under contract. Now, in that contract, we said, hey, a couple things have to happen for us to finish buying the land. So then once we have it in contract, that's when we start the entitlement process. Now, we're not going in blind. We've seen the land, we've already checked out the entitlement process before we buy it, and we're 95% certain that we'll get the entitlements. That's when we go ahead and we buy the land because we've taken out all the risk or almost all the risk, as much risk as we can possibly get out of there. And we get the entitlements done and then we turn around and we sell it. You can build on it if you want to, or you can just sell it with the entitlements. But remember, the entitlements are where the biggest chunk of money is made. You can sell it with entitlements to another builder or to another apartment owner or a storage facility owner or subdivision home builder, et cetera, et cetera. So what we're doing is we're forcing value into projects and we're getting paid on that increase. That's all we're doing. So it's crazy to think about it this way, but by the time construction equipment show up on a job site or show up somewhere, the money's already been made. Majority of the money's already been made. Why? Because they've had to get the entitlements so that equipment could show up and start working. So you have the raw land purchase price, and then you have the permission to build or entitlement price when you turn around and sell it. Now, remember, we bought the ground at the raw land purchase price. We said we need to get these entitlements and we will pay you X for it. That's the raw land value. Now, once we have the entitlements, the land is worth a multiple of the raw land. Why? Because we've sucked out all the risk for the next person that buys it and they can just go ahead and build what they want to build there. Okay? Because we know it in advance. So that's what we're getting paid on. That's why we get paid so much money. Why? Because we shrink down the risk and we put the output here. So development is really not that complicated. We're just transferring value. So when you think about the doctor in this, you have the medical student, they take the test, they pass the test, they get that sheet of paper. Now they're worth millions of dollars in the future because they can earn millions of dollars because they have that paper, right? But before, what were they doing is they were controlling the opportunity before it existed. That's what we do with land. That's why I like to use this analogy. We only buy when our plans are approved or when we get the entitlements. So that's how we shrink down the risk because we're only paying for the ground once we get our entitlements, once we know we're getting our entitlements. So at this point here, you might think this is too good to be true. What's the catch? The catch is that you have to deal with the government, and the government has a process, and you have to know and understand the rules to navigate that process. And it does cost money to get those entitlements because you got to hire people to do studies and certain things on that raw land. So it tells the government that, yes, they can do this, it will work, and you should allow them to do it. And that's what you're spending on it. So you might be like, great, I don't know the process and I don't have a bunch of money to do a deal like that. Okay, you're right, you don't. But here's where it gets even better. And that is because once you understand how value is created, then the next question becomes, who actually pays for all this? And that brings me to step 4 is we just created value. Now we're going to apply leverage. All right. What is leverage? Most people think you need to have money to make money. And in a lot of cases, some cases, if you approach it that way, you do. So I'm going to say you're right. But if you think that way, I'm much more resourceful. I think we should just be more resourceful. So while having money definitely helps and makes it easier, it also limits the amount deals you can do because everybody runs out of money at some point. So most people think you need capital to do deals, but the truth is you need to control the opportunity first. So once you have the opportunity and you control it, capital will show up. It will. If you put it together and you show it to a couple people in a certain way, the money's going to be there. Why? Because there's more money than there are deals. There's people with more money than people who know how to do really good deals. That's the difference. That's the rub right there. There's no other way around it. So needing money to do deals is the biggest misconception in development. Everyone thinks, I don't have $4 million, so I can't do this deal. I'm going to tell you, a lot of people assume that developers are rich. And if that were true, I'd still be digging ditches, laying pipe. Okay, because when I started being a real estate developer, I was not rich. As a matter of fact, I had no money. I had zero money. I had less than $0. I think I owed money at the time. But here's the thing. Most developers start by controlling the opportunity. All right. We're controlling the opportunity. How do we do that? Is that we sign a PSA and we say, if this and this happens, we're going to pay you X for this and buy it. That's it. It's that simple. Now, it's a little more complicated when you put pen to paper, but that's the simple concept. And here's the thing. There's 2 parts to every deal. You have people putting the opportunity together. These are the investors and these are the developers and these are people who know how to get stuff done. Then you've got the team that does all the work, the engineers, the contractors, and the architects. So here's how we look at the deal again. You have the raw land and we want to get the entitlements. The arrow is the entitlements to the promised land, right, on this property. So before entitlements, the land is just land. It's raw land. We offer the seller X amount of dollars for his raw land. It's at the raw land price. The seller says, okay, we sign an agreement. We put the property under contract. Now we control the property. Now what we do is we work on creating value. And once we see the kind of value we think we're going to get, we start talking to people who want that value, meaning home builders, meaning apartment complex developers, meaning whatever you're getting the entitlements for, those people that want those type of projects. We start talking to them and we attract them. We say, hey, we have this project coming down the pipe, should be done in a few months or an X amount of time. And I think we're going to sell it at entitlement for this amount. Is this something you and your company would be interested in? And yes, guess what? A lot of these guys are. Why? Because this is how they buy deals. They don't want to do the part where you develop it. Why? Because it takes time and they don't understand it. They want to just buy it done because you've removed all the risk because now they know what they can buy, what they can build, and how much they can sell it for. And that's why builders love approved, entitled, approved rights to build because there's no risk to them. They can then take that and go to their bank and look, see, look, the government says I can build this. I want a loan for this. I know it can be done 100%. How? Because we do the paperwork to get the entitlements and get the deal ready for them. Now that the paperwork's done, we close the contract. So what happens is that we sold it to the builder over here. That builder puts his money in escrow, signs the paperwork. The seller comes in, they take their chunk of money, and then we get the difference. So whatever we put in the middle there, that's how much we get. Okay. So it's really, I mean, it's in a way, we're writing our own paycheck. You're definitely writing your own paycheck on the size and the kind of development deals you're doing. So that's really important. So the seller gets paid and they get their money. So this is the exact scenario on how I did all of these projects, the ones that I showed you. And here's the thing, I want you to remember this, is that capital is always looking for opportunity. If you found a deal that could double investors' money, do you think capital would be interested? Absolutely. If you found opportunities and you remove the risk and you create the value before you spend the money because you structured the deal correctly, would investors want to do that deal? Absolutely. And this is where we discovered something even more powerful, is that the real wealth engine is in the velocity of capital. So what does that mean? That means that we got to exit the deal and we recycle the capital. A lot of people will ask me, they'll say, hey, you probably could have got $20,000 more for that subdivision or for that development or something else. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I could have gotten $20,000 more and it probably would have cost me an extra 2 or 3 months. But instead, I got $20,000 less, but I took that capital and I got my money back and I went and immediately stuck it in another deal. And guess what? Because I did that, I'm going to make way more than the $20,000 I gave up because I wanted to move my money into another deal where we're making big money again. So it's not about a single project. It's about building a repeatable wealth engine. That's what I'm showing you how to do today. That's what the 5 steps are for, is we're going to build you a wealth engine. A lot of people think that wealth comes from you buy an asset, you hold it, and you wait for appreciation. And yes, do you get appreciation? If you're buying in the right markets, yes. Is it a very slow process? Absolutely. It's year over year. I don't have that much time. Now, we're not going to get rich quick. You're not going to make $1 million your first year. Maybe you are, but that's not how I teach it. That's not how I tell you to do it. Are you going to make really good money? Absolutely. By year 2, do you think you can make million? Absolutely. It's not get rich quick, but it's also not the slow old way of doing real estate. What we focus on is creating value, exit, and then recycle. Create value, exit, recycle. Create value, exit, recycle. So here is an example. Let's say we invest $100,000 into an apartment deal. Okay, and we have other investors in there, and we invest $100,000 in it. And let's just say that we get 10%, which is really high for one of those types of deals. And so we're in there 5 years, so we get 10% per year. That's $50,000 return to capital. And let's say, so in 5 years, we've made $50,000. And let's say we refinance the project and we get our $100,000 back. So we've gotten back $150,000. In the development model, that same $100,000 invested at the end of 5 years turns into $344,000. All right. And you still get your $100,000 back. Now, what's the difference? The difference is that we're moving the money. We're using velocity to our advantage and we're moving the money in and out of deals, in and out of deals, in and out of deals. So we're making much more money. And notice that I put a 20% return. Well, in development, that is very low. So here's what happens is that both the deals start with $100,000, but one strategy creates wealth faster. And that's the difference in velocity of capital. Apartments, buy, wait, hold, exit, $150,000. Development deals create, exit, reinvest $344,000. Now, tell me, is there any more risk? No. As a matter of fact, there's less risk because we're in and out of different deals. So that means we're in and out of different markets if we choose. And we can choose those markets. So we can choose to stay in really good markets. Okay. Because we're in and out. We're not 5 years in one market, one deal. The other thing is that we didn't do anything differently. We didn't have to work that much harder. We didn't create more risk. As a matter of fact, we decreased risk, but we've made more than double the amount of money just by paying attention to the velocity of our money and how we're using it. Now, this year, obviously, this works best in a strong market. That's not true. I've done this in down markets, I've done it in up markets, I've done it in transactional markets. But I do have 3 rules. And those are I only invest in wealth curve markets. At a minimum, I shoot to double the money. I don't always double the money, but I always shoot for it. I'm in no deal longer than 18 months unless there has to be a very compelling reason. And why is that? Is because I want to buy and sell in the same market. So once I realized that all of those things had to come together, and I realized that I could find opportunities, remove risk, create value, leverage capital, and then recycle profits, the deals stopped being one-time investments, one-time events, like the apartment scenario. That's a one-time event. They became a wealth engine. So if you had to choose between 100K to 150K in 5 years, or turning 300 or turning the 100K into over 300,000 in the same amount of time period, what are you going to choose? And that's the 5-step wealth curve formula. We just talked about how to exit and recycle the capital. What we walk through is the exact framework we use when evaluating, developing, and doing our opportunities. And that's what my company does. This is what my company has done for 25 years. And this is what we do. This is how we make money over and over again. So if you understand these 5 principles, you now understand how many major development deals actually work and how they're actually done. But there's a big difference between understanding the framework and actually doing the deals, because now you have to find the deals, underwrite them, raise the capital, navigate legal documents, and assemble the team. And you'll probably find the deals that are simple, but they're not easy. And there's 2 paths from here on out. Path 1 is you do it yourself. You've heard what I had to say. You use the basic framework. You go out, you find deals, you learn through trial and error, and you take years or decades to figure it out. I spent some time figuring this out when I first started. Or path 2 is you work with an experienced developer. Real deals, you learn faster and you partner on opportunities. There's really only 2 paths from here. Path 1, do it yourself, or path 2, work with experienced developers. Both paths work. Just like we said, the apartment deal versus the development deal, 150 versus 344. Both those things produce money. They just produce it at different timelines, at different speeds, and different amounts. Different people want different things. I understand that. And there's typically 2 types of people in this audience. Group 1 are the investors, people who want to go in on deals like deals that we have. You have capital, you want exposure to good deals with low risk, big opportunity, low risk. We do the work, you make some money, it's a great deal. Group 2 are people who want to become developers, people who want to learn how to find deals, want to structure their own projects, and want to become the sponsor. All right, that's great too. So instead of trying to force everyone into one path, we came up with one solution, and I'm going to show that solution in a minute. But a quick question is that I hope you have the fact that you've seen some of the deals I've done, that you understand that we really know how to do this and that you can do this too. So that's exactly what we do on the strategy call. So here's the thing, guys, is that I told you I was going to give you my free course, and it's the same course that my company uses, that people, when they come on board in my company, they use the course that I'm going to give to you. Now, that course, unfortunately, is a loaded gun. That's how I view it, is it's a loaded weapon. And if I just give it to you, you may go out and you may misinterpret, or you may think about it, or you may try to do something that it's not meant to do. And the thing is that I don't want that to happen to you. That's why I have put the link in the chat. If you click on that link and you schedule a call and you show up to the call, I'm going to give you free access to that course. It's free. Don't bring your credit card to the call, okay? Because I'm not trying to sell you anything. We're going to ask you some questions, though. We're going to say, hey, where are you at? Have you done deals before? Et cetera, et cetera. We're going to try to help you, because I know that if I just give you the course, you watch the videos, you do the workbook, and you just go out and you start doing deals, you may not have success. And I don't want that for people. I want people to have success. That's why one of the reasons why I'm doing this. Or you can decide, you can say, okay, you know what, Joe? I don't want to do that. But what I want to do is I want to work with your company. I want in on your deals that you and your investors do. All right, that's great. And we can set you up and show you how to get in touch with the correct person on how to do that. So you're probably asking yourself, like, okay, Joe, why are you showing us this? Why are you giving us this stuff? Why are you talking about this? How do you make money? Okay, I make money two ways. One is that if you become one of our investors and you start investing in our deals, we're going to make money with you. We're both making really good money. Okay. Two is that if you take the free course, chances are somewhere down the line, you're going to have some more questions or you're going to want some help with something because you want to start doing bigger deals. And hopefully you'll come back to us and we'll help you with those and you'll pay us to help you. That's why I do it. That's why I've put this together because I know that if you take the course and you have some success and you work at it, you're going to want to help. You're going to want to use us later. Okay. And you're going to come back to us. If you want to invest in deals, we're right here. You saw that we put deals together and that's a whole different conversation. But if it's something you're interested in, then you should book the strategy call. Either way, like I said, don't bring your credit card to that strategy call because I'm not selling you something. I'm trying to understand where you're at and I'm trying to give you a roadmap to help you succeed because I know that later on, at some point in time, you're going to come back and ask us for help or you're going to put money with us. And that's it. That's the end of the call. And the other thing is too, like this says, if there's three things usually happen. If you decide this isn't for you, great. You've just learned the five basic principles on how to develop deals. Hopefully you've seen how we create the wealth engine through the wealth curve, and you start to think about things a little bit differently. That's awesome. Number two is you get access to deals as an investor, or you learn how to find and structure your own deals and become the developer. So that's why I think if you're interested, you want to do this, you should book the call. I have put the link in the chat. It is the very first item in the chat, so you can book the call. We don't have a lot of spaces open, but if you're interested in this sounds like something you want to do, I would definitely book the call. Here's the thing. A lot of people I run into, I've taken a ton of courses. I've taken so many courses, it's crazy. But the thing about that is, in taking all the courses, like I know and understand the BRRRR method. I've done it, I've used it, I get it. This right here, this BOGO method, what I just showed you, bolts onto it perfectly. I've done the subject to method. I've used it, I've done it, I've learned it, I've lived it. Guess what? This as well bolts onto that perfectly. And you can do multiple deals doing it that way. I've also been a wholesaler. I actually owned a wholesaling company for about 14 months, and we were very successful at it. The problem with it is I hated it. I didn't like it. But guess what? This bolts right onto that as well. So here's the thing. You can do many different types of real estate and you can pull those different things in, but they all work with what we call the BOGO method. And the BOGO method is where I teach you, and this is what you're going to get that free course on. I teach you how to go out. I teach you where to look for these deals, where to find them, what constitutes a good deal, and then I show you how to divide it, legally divide it so that you can buy the house, fix the house, sell the house, and divide off a lot and either build on it or sell it yourself. That's what I teach. That's what the course teaches. It's awesome. I've been doing it for 25 plus years. I know it works. I've done thousands of deals. We do this all the time. We've done it all over the country. I haven't owned land or property in every single state yet, but I'm pretty close. I've owned them a lot of states. So we've done this. I tell you that just so you know, we've done it everywhere. Now, I do get asked the question also, hey, how do I know if this works where I live? So I'm going to give you a very simple parameter. It's very simple. Okay. The thing is, if you live in a county and you may or may not live in a city, but if you live in a state and that state you live in a county and in that county you live in a city or not in the city, this works. So guess what? If you live in a state, all right, all of us live in a state, right? Guess what? All states are made up of counties and they cover the entire state. So everyone lives in a county, right? No matter where you go. Whether you live in Florida, whether you live in North Dakota, whether you live in California, whether you live in Washington, they all have counties and they cover the entire state. So we know you live in a county. Guess what? That means you can do this. Now, there are some territories by the US, and those territories all have counties or something similar. That means you can do this there too. You can even do this in Canada. That's what I'm trying to get across is that you can do it everywhere. So, if you live in the United States, Canada, even South America, you can do this. If you live somewhere there, you can do this. And what we teach works. So I'm going to open this up to questions right now. If anyone has any questions, this is live, so I'd love to answer them for you if you have questions, but I wanted to make sure I covered this. So what have we covered? One is we've covered that this can be done everywhere. All right. It can be done legally because there are what's called land use laws. Every state, every county has them. All right. Every country has them. And the way I teach it is that we teach you how to buy a house with extra land, divide off the house. So you have the house and the land. That's why we call it BOGO, buy one, get one. And you sell both of them and you make those profits. And I'll share this too. So last year, I think our average student made $80,000 on their first year. So if you think $80,000 can help change your life a little bit, this is definitely something I would do. So I'm going to tell you right now, schedule that call so that you can get access to the free course. There's a bunch of modules in there. I've shot a bunch of videos. You can have access to the free course and you can use it, or you can go schedule yourself a call and you can talk to us about how you want to play a role in investing with us, becoming one of our investors. So either of those work. If you have no interest, it was nice talking to you. I'm glad you were here. I do want to say I'm going to end the webinar now, but I want to say thank you for being here. Take advantage of booking that call. It is free. Don't bring your credit card because we're not going to ask you for one. Okay? Best of luck to you. I hope to see you doing some BOGO deals. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.